next I am having a lovely conversation following on from my lovely interview with Lewis about the metaverse as well. And I'm joined here by Amelia Kallman. Thank you so much. I struggled to say your surname actually because we just talked about it. It's actually originally Swedish, right?
Yes.
And in Swedish it's Kallman,
Yes.
but Kallman. So thank you so much for joining us here today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So your title, which I love, is Futurist at the big reveal.
Yes.
And you are, as you call yourself on your profile on LinkedIn, a leading London futurist, speaker and author. You focus on innovation and technology communications. And you work with brands and consulting them and agencies and governments around the impact of new technologies. Have I got that about right?
Yes. I do lots of research and reporting around the impact of new technologies on the future of business and our lives. But one thing that kind of differentiates me is that I don't just look at the opportunities. I also equally look at the risks of these technologies and help to advise on strategies that we can implement today to make sure that we're making the most responsible choices for the future.
What made you, sort of focus on this field?
It's a good question. I don't actually come from a technology background.
Yeah.
So I grew up as a child actress. I owned nightclubs in New York and in Shanghai. I got thrown out of China, ended up in the UK. It's a long story. I wrote a book about it. And then in about 2013, I finally got a visa to work in the UK, and I needed a job, any job. I didn't care. And I sort of taught my way into a role as a marketing assistant at a creative technology agency. And I knew nothing about technology or innovation at the time.
Yeah.
But I discovered really fast that I have a natural curiosity and enthusiasm around innovation and being on the cutting edge.
Yeah.
And because I don't come from a technical background, I have a talent for being able to explain things in a way that anyone can understand.
Yeah.
So I opened up innovation labs in London and Dubai, and then I had one in Scotland for Wired magazine at one point. And it was 2013, so that's when Oculus Rift got kickstarted and Google Glass first came out, and IBM Watson put AI into the conversation. And I was right on the forefront of that, and I realized that there was a real kind of gap in the market for people being able to contextualize these for companies and explain what it means for them and the potential of it. So in 2017, I went freelance as an independent futurist. Being independent, I am not forced to market or sell these technologies, so it differentiates me, and I really hold that as a core value.
Yeah.
And then I specialize sort of in XR. I have the XR Star podcast, and then I have a YouTube series called Blockchain in the Metaverse. But the big reveal is a newsletter and a YouTube series that comes out once a month. And it's basically my top 10 coolest things I've discovered as a futurist that I think other people should know about. And it's a free service, and people can subscribe on my website. And it's just something that I love to do. I think, core to my purpose is educating people. I feel like there's a big business around trying to make people intimidated by these technologies and scared of these technologies. And it is natural to feel that way when you don't understand something.
Yeah.
So I really try to use my platform to be able to educate people and open their eyes to opportunities as well as the risks, and hopefully empower people and understand that we all do play a role in the future of how these technologies impact our lives.
Yeah. And, I think you're so right. I don't come from a tech background either. I obviously work for a technology company now, but I do well in it because, as you said, I can translate the language into an easier way for people to understand how to use it.
Yeah.
And I think that's super important,
Yeah.
and you've got to have that curiosity from wanting to learn stuff. And that's why I went into technology. I was like, it's going to change every day. There's always something that's going to be different. And I think that's what makes it exciting being in technology.
Yeah, that's what I love probably most about my job. It's never finished. There's always something new to learn, new to discover. And then hopefully I can explain it to people through my talks and my channels in ways that we can all have that conversation.
Yeah. So you mentioned, obviously, you specialize in XR. as one of the areas. And obviously I can imagine that the risks around it are a lot less now than it was maybe, many years ago when it first came out. Is that sort of something you keep an eye on as well, to sort of that support that risk adversity, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, to some degree, we don't know the extent of what risks may happen. So, for instance, we just know that this is a very powerful technology. It has the power to rewire our brains, as all technologies do. And, that sounds really scary, but I say, if you have your phone, if you look at evolution, generations like even Gen Z and then Gen Alpha that's coming after them, they have a different relationship to technology than previous generations. And this is going to have a huge impact on the future of business. So Gen Z is entering the workforce around 2025, which is going to coincide with a lot of the major tech companies coming out with their headsets, their XR headsets. And the headsets themselves are going to be able to push a lot of the processing and computing to the cloud. So this means that they get lighter, they get less expensive, they get more stylish. And I think this is an interesting correlation, because the expectations that Gen Z have correlating with this advancement that we're going to have in accessibility in this kind of consumer market means that a lot of these companies today need to really stay on their toes and get started on this journey if they're going to stay relevant in the years to come.
And that's, I guess, what you're specializing in, is advising them as well over how that's going to affect them long term.
Exactly.
Amazing. And in 2022, which still the year we're in, I keep on forgetting, you were recently named as one of the top 25 women in the metaverse. Firstly, congratulations. Whoop whoop.
Thank you.
How does that feel? Like,
it's really cool, and it's so great to for women are really kind of like leading and raising each other up in this community, which is so empowering and so great to see. I think we've all taken kind of an active stance on, we want to be inclusive of everyone, make sure that people are represented. I just had the sheer pleasure of hosting Nani Della Pena on stage, who is the godmother of virtual reality, according to Engadget and The Guardian, and also named Technology Innovator of the Year by the Wall Street Journal. She invented, essentially, immersive journalism. She's incredible. I just had to thank her for being a visible role model in this community and space. And I just think that we are at the beginning of something really huge. And it's so important that we make sure that this is inclusive of everyone moving forward. And it's funny, I've just been asked to be on a panel that's all women, and they're really excited about it, but I'm like, we actually need to have equal representation. You know, it's
and you know what, I think that's sometimes now forgotten, right? Because I'm moderating a panel session in a few months' time, and I thought about all of these amazing women I wanted to bring on, and then I was like, actually, Cecilia, you need to have some men on there as well, because it needs to be fully inclusive, different, sort of backgrounds, and I think that's sometimes forgotten. People just think, oh, if I do an all-women panel, that's diversity, but it's not, right?
Right, yeah. And it's interesting, too, because I'm doing a lot of talks now around sustainability and the environmental footprint, because we have things like Web3 technologies that people haven't really considered. But I am seeing this kind of trend that there being a majority female panel. And I think that's just really an interesting, odd thing that's carrying over, because you think around Mother Earth and sustainability, and that's not a woman's problem, it's everybody's problem.
Exactly. So you mentioned Web3 there. What for someone who hasn't heard of it, what's so special about that?
Okay, absolutely. So to understand Web3, it's good to kind of understand what Web 1 and Web 2 are, in case we all missed it, because we did. So Web 1 was the original internet. It was basically a read-only site. There wasn't much interactivity. And then Web 2 sort of developed around 2004. And this is when the birth of social media. This is when big tech companies realized how valuable our data was. And it was the birth of the data economy. and all this kind of like, sharing, clicking and subscribing, all this that we're kind of giving away, it empowers these centralized companies, and they essentially have so much power and control, which we have seen, and they sit outside of governmental jurisdiction, which is a problem in its own right. I mean, it's a big area. So the idea about Web3 is that it's a reaction to that. Yeah. It's about taking control of our own data, taking control of the future of the internet, and it's an idea and it's a concept. But the underlying base of that concept is blockchain technology.
Okay.
And this idea that we can kind of cut out middlemen and have these transparent interactions and exchanges. So this includes crypto and NFTs, and we're just barely scratching the surface. Those are, where this is all going.
And is that sort of also then now at the start when, for example, the third-party cookies, right, is being phased out, right? Is that a part of that Web3 development, or am I getting that completely wrong?
I don't think it's directly that, but we shouldn't have that in a completely decentralized metaverse. So I mean, we have decentralized metaverses that exist today, and we have centralized metaverses that exist today, and it will be interesting. I think they are, and I'm seeing these kind of Web2 platforms bringing in Web3 capabilities. So eventually everybody will have to escape regulation. So this idea that it's going to be this kind of like utopian internet where we are all the guards and guardians of what happens there, and the judge, jury, and executioner, I don't see that as possible, because I don't think we've ever, as a whole global society, agreed on anything. So
nope, that is very true.
Challenges ahead, and there's this whole conversation around interoperability and how important it is to be able to, take my own identity and my own money and the things I own, the NFTs, the cryptos, all that kind of stuff, from one space to another, like you do go from one website to another. But that is going to take some serious collaboration and some trust between parties, because a lot of data is going to have to be shared between them. And I just asked Nani about this and her opinion on it, and she basically said, yes, it is. It's really important in that anybody who is not, going to participate and share that data is going to die, because there's going to be other companies who are willing to do it.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree anymore. And so obviously going back to metaverse, obviously, as you're named as one of the top 25 women in it, obviously you're a huge believer of it. Where do you see that's going next? Like, what's the developments we should expect over the next few months, years?
Yeah, so I mean, we have all these different metaverses, and I think it's really siloed at the moment. So we have this kind of industrial metaverse, and then we have the gaming metaverse, and then we have social metaverses, and the thing is, and also entertainment metaverses. And so they're all kind of like developing in their own segments, when really there's so much room for collaboration and crossover that we would all benefit from. So it's my hope that we start to see these areas merge and come together. So I think that will also help from a sustainability aspect as well. And so it's really cool to see where it's all going. And I guess on an overarching view, seeing Web2 companies dipping their shoe in and getting started if they haven't already. There's about 3 tiers of companies who one tier have already been in, because it would be weird if they weren't, and then another tier who see it as a huge opportunity and are starting to make revenue within there, and then there's the other companies that just don't know where they sit yet. And that's kind of what's most interesting to me.
Yeah.
You know?
No, absolutely. What do you think some of the challenges are around the adoption of the metaverse, though, for companies like that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, right now it's about knowing your audience too, because it's mostly gamers. It's a lot of Gen Z.
Yeah.
And if those are not your core demographics, then we need to look at, you know, what is important to your company, what you're actually trying to do and what you're trying to say and how this can support it.
Yeah.
And so if it's not relevant for them to come in right now, it will be in a couple years' time. And so what does that journey there look like? The other thing too that I think is really important is I include the augmented reality digital overlays on top of our physical world in the metaverse. So these are going to be gateways into the kind of exclusive 360 experiences we see. But a gateway to that is that the whole world is going to have this kind of digital overlay that sits on top that people can access through their phone or through glasses. And it means that you're not exclusive to your environment or the people around you. And you can create these gamified experiences walking down the street.
Yeah. That is super interesting. Do you think one day we're all going to walk around with these glasses and that's the way we live?
Well, a lot of people wear glasses all the time. Yeah. So, I mean, I think I was just, when I introduced Noni earlier, I was saying, you know, 10 years from now, instead of standing on stage clicking through a bunch of slides, I'm going to be able to transport the whole audience on a journey with me and instantly transform the digital space around us. So I'm not just talking about the view from the top of the Burj Khalifa or the war in the Ukraine. I'm actually transporting everyone there together to have an experience. And then when it comes to things like data and graphs, being able to orchestrate my presentation with everyone's smart glasses, so they're seeing things fluctuate and grow around us. And then with a click of the button, I can change, from being myself up on stage to being an avatar or being an animal or being a celebrity that has licensed their image for me to use. Yeah. So the possibilities are really endless.
Yeah. So to finish us off here today, what's the one thing that is super interesting now apart from the metaverse then?
Well,
I'm sure there's a lot, but...
I mean, Web3 is really interesting because we don't know how it's gonna play out yet, you know? And so for me, that's really exciting to watch. And then the other thing that's just really important to have in the conversation is AI. Yeah. And in a way, I feel like we need to keep reminding ourselves of who AI is because the metaverse has kind of taken over this conversation now. Yeah. But, you know, AI is happening, and it is. We want to make sure it's not happening to us; that it's happening for us.
I couldn't agree anymore because I've said I think AI is underutilized. The powerful technology behind it is there, but we don't know how to use it often, and we need to start. We need to start doing that. Yeah. So I couldn't agree anymore. Feels like we're on the same page around a lot of things here. Well, thank you so much, Amelia, for doing this. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and I think our audience has as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all of those to you who's joined us online. Obviously, we will be posting a couple of links here to Amelia's website, so you can check out her YouTube channel, her newsletter, everything. I certainly will, so I hope you will too. And we'll be back very shortly with another interesting interview. Thank you so much.